Welcome back to episode 2, Profitable Without Pretending, here with my co-host, John Pierce, good friend and CEO of Coastal Wealth, Jeremy Straub. Excited to be here with both of you guys, obviously.
I feel like you started with like a tongue twister. Profitable without pretending. It's like
it's
you
hard.
made the name of the show.
John,
actually hard to be able to talk.
I thought I killed it.
I love the name, but I didn't know it was hard to say. You know, if you say it quick.
It is hard to say.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited. I haven't seen John in like over a decade or two. I don't know how long it's been, but it's pretty awesome to be back with you. And unfortunately, I get to see him often. So, I always do like to get to see him, though. Happy to be here, man.
Thanks for coming, man. Well, I want to start off here. Good point. How did you two meet? Because you guys, go way back.
Yeah, it was way back. So after Merrill, Manish hired me to run recruiting for P1 at Ameriprise. And my first
P1's the employee channel.
Yeah, exactly. So the W2 employee channel at Ameriprise. And we had this managers meeting. And that was my first introduction to probably 110, 115 managers, complex directors. And I go in the room and I start talking about the importance of recruiting, inorganic growth, what it's going to take. And I literally had managers stand up and walk out at me.
I wasn't one of those.
No, you
weren't. I stayed.
You definitely stayed. And it was like, it's like anything else in life, right? It's like, all right, you got your 10% of your rock stars, your thoroughbreds. Jeremy was one of them and consistently was one of them. You just got to feed them and stay out of the way and let them win. And then you got, the bottom 30%. Those are the ones that walked out. Those are the ones you got to put a bullet in the head. And then you got the middle group, which is the high activity, low effectiveness. And if you help the high activity, low effectiveness move into Jeremy's territory, company takes off. But that was my first introduction to Jeremy. People walking out of me.
How do you remember it?
I remember, honestly, I was just trying to absorb as much information as I could at that point. I was like average for the most part. I'd always say myself average, except for recruiting. And when Ameriprise made the move towards recruiting experienced advisors in 2005, I just made a bet that this is what my whole career was going to be kind of pushed on. I figured if I was able to be really good at that, I would somehow end up okay.
Yeah.
And so he came as an expert being able to do that. So all I wanted to do was absorb as much learning as I can going through. Because there was Manish came in at that time, he was running it and he was new to it too. He really was just trying to figure it out. So he brought in more seasoned talent. But you were so young at that point.
I was still young.
But brought him in to be able to take the experience from all the wirehouses in. So I was super excited to be able to learn from at that point.
That's awesome. So recruiting obviously brought you guys together. I think that's kind of what brought us together too, right?
Yeah.
And me and you. And
it's also the point of the show.
I don't think it is, Jeremy.
Oh.
It's not recruiting without pretending. But good try, huh?
I like it.
But yeah, I think that's, the one thing we all do have in common is I think we were all great recruiters, and that's kind of how everybody made their name in the industry, right? You obviously Merrill, Ameriprise, Cetera, Stiefel. You obviously killing it at Ameriprise and then moving to the MetLife Mass merger. Me just kind of dragging along through the oceans of the world. From
No. You and I met. We recruited at Cetera at the time. The biggest mass group we had ever recruited. Jimmy Stearns, and at the time you were
running all the biz dev for both.
Running biz dev for Jim and Teen, and did just an amazing job. In fact, I'm sure Jim's probably over 100 financial professionals.
140, I think now, doing 26, something like that. So he has some small producers, but that guy has like one of those hearts where you're like, he's not the take anybody guy, but he's like, see, everybody's a superstar.
Well, he came in, he didn't use any of the transcom for himself. He did a heavy lift of building an organization. And, I think that you decided, because we met when you were with Stearns at Cetera, and you decided to create Revolt. Right?
Yeah, I think I went to.
Before that, though, Stearns was able to build that because the part I get excited about him is good things happen to good people.
He's great,
and he's such a good dude, and people are attracted to be around him. And you get so excited for someone like that to win, because it's, you're always wondering, okay, there's all these books like Mastery, or like they kind of say you should be a little bit harder, like the Machiavelli approach in business. And he was a good example of just do the right thing, treat people really well, do good things. And he's built a great business. He built a great business, and you could put him on a great platform for Statera to help him grow.
Yeah, he did a great job of, he's always does the right thing, super advisor centric, right? Like kind of what Revolt is kind of like my first ever time kind of experiencing the ecosystem. We had that IMO that we had built through Totus SP. We had the business solution suite that he helped build. He had the obviously the wealth management firm, and like because of those, it was my first time kind of seeing an ecosystem. But like from a recruiting standpoint, he did a really good job of like being consistent about his message. He understood what his message was, understood what his value prop was. And a lot of his value prop was just like, hey, I'm not going to fuck you like everybody else.
I feel like if anybody goes to him after this episode, we should all get a recruiting fee, because we just talked this dude up at this point.
Yeah, he was great. And he was a great mentor, right? Like I told somebody the other day, he was one of the first mentors. And I think this is a conversation we had last time. It was the first mentor who I ever had who put more into me than took from me. He was the first guy who ever was like, hey, I'm going to spend more time and more money and more effort putting something into you, or putting expertise and transfer of knowledge, than like all my mentors before that were just total scumbags.
Well, I don't think a lot of people, there's not enough people in their career that when they see somebody younger with a lot of talent come through, go, okay, I'm going to mentor them or that. They think of that going, this guy's going to make me a lot of money.
Mm.
This is a pony I could be able to ride for a while, and that. And I think if you took more time as a leader, and now I'm older, I'm almost 50, right? And saw talent and really tried to evolve that talent from a non-selfish perspective, it will come back to you at a certain point. But I get a lot of satisfaction of seeing other people grow really well, which wasn't the case in my 30s and probably even in my early 40s. It's much more later where I love watching and seeing over like a 5-year period, somebody really evolve into a very successful individual, not even just a business owner, but like a contributing member of society. That's probably one of the best feelings you could have as a leader.
100%. I think that's something that I've noticed from you too. Like, obviously we do a bunch of business together through recruiting, but like we also become friends, and you spend a ton of time with me. You spend a ton of time with me. You spent a lot of time with him, right? We kind of have like 3 generations here of people who have decided to pour into each other, and it's been a really cool
I
thing
love
for
that you
me.
said 3 generations, because I feel like we're the same generation. But like the fact that you made him a 3rd generation is great at that point.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. Yeah.
There are some people that remember that I did used to have hair.
Wait, you had hair?
That's actually why I grew mine out, because I knew I was going to be on this episode with you, just to make you jealous at this point.
Back in the day, I did. Well, I think what's interesting about our stories is that I don't know if you remember, Jeremy, but you and I had a long conversation before you decided to change careers in Ameriprise. You had a very successful and storied career in Ameriprise. I remember all the amazing things you did as a leader. And then you had this opportunity to go do something else, and it took an element of risk. And Eric, same thing with you. When you're at Totus, you're fat, dumb, and happy. You could have just stayed forever, and you're like, no, you know what? I want to do my own thing. And so I think there's an element of successful people and the correlation to risk. And I know, risk can make people feel uneasy. When you were leaving, I mean, you were at Ameriprise forever, right?
15 years. 15 years. Yeah.
That's forever.
I mean, it's your first real job too.
Right out of college. Yeah, right out of college. And then decided to go off and start Coastal. I was driving with my kids today to school, and we were talking about having assets work for you. They're 7 to 12, right? But assets work for you opposed to you going W-2. We're like driving by a building. I'm saying, if you bought this building, I'm explaining the economics of a condo building, and like an asset generating you revenue to pay rent, versus if you go to McDonald's and you're getting like a W-2 to be able to work at McDonald's, and you want assets to work for you. And I said, basically it comes down to, 2 parts. You can work harder, but really it's the level of risk you're comfortable taking is a large piece if you're going to get outsized returns. And, starting your own company, moving away from like a 7-digit income that is there, into going into something where you don't know if the income's there, that's a big risk for more upside. And it's paid off. You just got to believe in yourself enough to do it. I think that there's so many people more talented than me that were at Ameriprise or at other companies that honestly would run a much more successful business than me. But they're so comfortable in where they are with the income they have and scared to go off where things aren't guaranteed or there isn't this controlled environment allowing them where they start to believe the environment's what allowed them to be successful, which I think could have helped develop the success from the right mentors. But there's a certain point where you start to grow past what your environment's allowing you to be able to achieve. And that's what happened to Ameriprise. I was a regional VP. I was running the Southwest of the United States. The president was only like 42. The CEO is 52. Both of them are still in the same role 11 years later. They're not going anywhere at that point. Like, so was I going to sit in the same role for another 10, 11 years as an executive of a Fortune 500 company? Or was I going to go start and take a risk on my own? And so for me, I was still too young and I felt like I had this opportunity to grow a lot more that I decided to go take on the risk. And I got in my first year when I left Ameriprise from a healthy income, my first year I made 40 grand and I was freaking out because I had a 2-year-old baby at that time. I'm like, I had no idea if I made the right decision or not. And I like started going, should I call back and be able to see? And actually Manish called me. He's like, hey, would you want to come back to be able to do it? I'm like, I don't know if I could go back and do that. But it was that kind of risk where, you know, obviously it's paid off, but I think that's a hard thing for people to decide on. And I think a lot of people that are extremely talented, if they would take that jump, would be really surprised at what they could accomplish in the world.
Well, you got 3 people at this table that have all taken that risk multiple times. And if you're willing to, that's a great analogy. If you're willing to have 40 grand and, you know, buy milk on a credit card and just head down and will yourself to success, you can do it. I mean, think about all the people we know that we grew up with who are now seeded really great companies. And think about what could be if other really great people would just take that risk, but it's not in their DNA. I guess the point is, if it's in your DNA, you got to try it.
I don't know if it was in my DNA. I think I left knowing that I wanted to be the guy at some point. I don't know if I was ready to be the guy. And I think I saw a little bit of that in my growth last year at Revolt. Like the year before was just me kind of running a company by myself and had a really good revenue year. Last year, I don't know if I was like, was ready, but what I did know, and I think it goes back to you, was like, I have one skill that will make me money no matter what. Like I can, I know how good I am at recruiting. It was probably the one skill I had the most belief in. So it goes back to like double down on what you're fucking good at. And I was really good at recruiting and I knew like I could make enough to live. I don't know if I didn't know if I could make enough to go be a trillionaire or have $100 million company, but like I could go make enough to live no matter what. And like having that one skill, yours was recruiting, yours was, I mean, you're a great entrepreneur as well, right? You love the strategy, like those things, like having one skill to fall back on no matter what, that's going to make you an income. I think that like for me was the only piece of comfort I left with.
Yeah, but you know what, when we talk about mentors and obviously Jeremy is one of your mentors, and something I've noticed about you over the last year is that unlike a lot of people, you actually listen. I mean, it
takes me a while, but I get
people, you know, Jeremy hit on it earlier. At my stage in my career, I have an obligation to help people. That's my mindset is I want to help as many people as I can. That's my legacy, right? And I've been appreciative of watching you absorb and listen, and I've given you some hard messages. My guess is Jeremy's probably giving me a 10x of those, right? But that you know, you're willing to listen, to absorb, and the main reason most people fail is because of their ego, and we all have to have egos.
I'm waiting for him to tell me that I don't have an ego. This is
I'm sitting there going, I was like gonna give you a compliment. I'm like, this dude doesn't need his ego stroked at all. Maybe I shouldn't give him a compliment at all at this point.
I was waiting for JP to be like, you're so humble.
Humble's not a word I associate with. No, sorry.
But I think JP's right in the sense that, you know, you've been able to achieve the success you've achieved because you absorb a lot of information from a lot of people and figure out how to apply it. to your own success, which is basically giving yourself a lot of mentors and coaches out of it. And one of the suggestions I always have to people is you should have 3 mentors. One should be in your seat, but more successful than you. So you're sitting in a recruiter's seat running a recruiting firm. How do you find somebody who's running a recruiting firm more successful? JP is a great example of it, right? Then you find somebody that's in your industry that you could be able to mentor from, that maybe not be there right in your line, but somewhere the farther along, which is, it might be me at that point, right? And then it's looking, okay, who can I find outside my industry that'll give me a complete different perspective to be able to do it? Which might be your father, it might be a couple of people going through to do it. And you ask people the same questions. You ask JP the question, me the question, your dad the same question. And we all answer it differently. And then you could take that and you absorb it and you do it. And I think you've done that really well, because most people either one, they'll do exactly what somebody tells them, which always doesn't work, because what you share in a coaching situation is only real 5% of the information. The other 95%, we're kind of inferring from all our knowledge, which we're probably pretty close, but there's probably some key data we missed when we gave you that advice that you have to be able to kind of apply to be able to do it. And so for you to be able to take the advice we give, but still be able to use your filter on it and then turn it into something, like that's the fun part. Like when I share something, go, here's how I handle it. You don't handle it exactly how I'd say handle it, but you make it your own and you make it to be end up being more successful. That's the part that I don't know about you, but that's what I get out of it, going, oh, this dude's better than me. I look at you sitting in the recruiting role. You are naturally a better recruiter than I ever was. And you are surrounded by a lot better people than I was, that you should easily smoke the mentor, right, on that part to be able to do it. And that's what you want. And that's what you want to see, right? Like I want to surround myself with people like that. And then on the flip side of that, I get to learn from you of a different lens of how you look at the industry, because I'm still looking at the industry with 26 years in the industry on it. And from my 2 companies I've been, you can provide me a whole different lens that helps me run my company better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the new generation, to your point, is like, there's 2 things, right? I think you have the parrot versus sponge, like, saying, right? Like, you can either be a parrot, which a lot of managers are. A lot of people love to be like, hey, Jeremy said this, so let me just go say this, right? Or JP told me this. And then there's the sponge where you soak it up, and then you soak up the water, and then water has to come back out in its own way, right? Like that's the sponge. But I think it's interesting, like the new generation is very like morally has some issues with like the industry, where I think the old guard very much accepted like what it is, or like was maybe even more appreciative that it like gave them the opportunities that it gave them.
Is that why you named this thing Revolt?
Yeah. I mean, but I have some serious issues with like the entire industry. And I think that's more why like I've left to the outside. But like our generation is not like grateful for the opportunities, or I shouldn't say as grateful. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people in this industry who wouldn't have made $1 million doing anything else. It's true. Right. And like, so I think the older generation is really grateful. The new generation is kind of, as you know, and you see it across the industry and across all industries, like the new generation is like fed up and has some like, finds a moral issue with everything. But like, I think this industry specifically has some like crazy pieces that I'm like, that's
it goes back to having really good internal mentors, and then actually investing in external coaching. I've been watching, I don't know if people subscribe or watch, but Jeremy's got some really good shorts with Coastal and his company. And there was one that really hit home with me, talking about, new to work, post-college, taking a sales job and failing and understanding what sales means. Why don't you talk about that?
When people ask me for career advice when they're getting right out of school, my answer all the time is you should take a sales job right off the bat. And I think, in meeting lots of entrepreneurs and buddies that are successful and how they got there, the ones that are successful are the best that are communicating and persuading people around them, right? So one of my buddies is a periodontist, but he owns 18 dental centers, and he sold out the private equity. He just sold his 3rd time, and he keeps building up and spinning it. But to be honest, he's great at sales. He knows exactly what the environment should look like when a patient comes in. He teaches all the dental hygienists how to upsell you when you're sitting there getting your teeth done. Like it is literally every single part of it is with a sales lens on. And so the people that I've seen that have succeeded really well, I mean, recruiting is just sales, sitting as a financial advisor, you're selling. Yes, you go run a business. Yes, it might be professional sales. Yes, you are helping people and doing other things that are just besides the vacuum salesman or the car salesman, which I take a little, again, the car business. So, my dad was in the car business. But I think a sales job right out of college, even if it's for 1 or 2 years, and then you become an accountant, that's great. Because when you're an accountant, you're going to have to get clients, and that's sales, from a prospecting piece to a communicating. Great. You want to go to law school, you become an attorney, you're in front of a trial and you're persuading the jury to be able to fall in your way. That is all sales. And so I can't think of a job, even if you're a teacher, you need to be able to sell the students to want to lean in and listen. The best teachers are the ones that present, they understand people, they know how to communicate effectively to keep the crowd or their students engaged. And so I can't see a better skill set to learn right out of college than a sales part to be able to do it.
100%.
And so that kind of goes to relationship building, right? And I remember you telling me about your dad's mantra. We talked about cars. I don't know if he worked at a Ford dealership.
We owned a Ford dealership.
Okay. So you shared something that I shared and credited to you and your dad in my first book, called Ford, and it ties back to just sales and relationships. And what does that acronym mean?
Wait, first, did you like the humble drop? Like in my first book, Ford at this point, that you can find it on Amazon. At this point,
my favorite. The first, it was my first meeting with JP, like post TOTUS. We're doing something, and he like drops Ford and then tells me a 4-hour story about you and your dad. I like walked in the gym the same day. I'm like, I fucking can't get away from you, Mike. I literally walked by Jeremy. I'm like, can't get away from you. JP just kept bringing up you and your dad. He goes, let me guess, Ford. I'm like, yep.
Well, what's wild is when we were early in the career, and you actually said this early in the career, how small the industry is. I didn't appreciate it when I was like in even my first 10 years. I'm like, dude, it's not small. Now I'm 26 years in the industry. I run into people all the time that I worked with there. They moved over here. They moved over here. Now at every company, you have like a contact to be able to do it. So 100% is small. But on the Ford side of my dad, yeah. So my dad had me early on in my career reading like motivational books. So I was reading Tony Robbins and Laura about neuro-linguistic programming right off the bat. He had me reading How to Win Friends and Influence People. He had me reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He had me reading autobiographies of Lee Iacocca and all this stuff. Like those were my book reports. So like I didn't appreciate how much he was training my brain to think a certain way. But what he pushed all the time was your ability to build relationships and your emotional intelligence, whether it's your own personal emotional intelligence or the emotional intelligence of your being able to communicate effectively through empathy, through other people, or just, having conversations, how that leads to just as much success, if not more, than the intellectual side of what you can learn or how smart you are. And so he would always try to teach me ways to be able to understand that. And so Ford was an acronym he used. So when you're having small talk, to be able to talk to people, or when you're having a one-on-one conversation with it's family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So asking them, oh, do you have kids? Oh, and then occupation, what do you do? Or recreation, how do you spend your time? Are you into sports, or where you're from? Oh, you like the Eagles? So we're both Philly guys. I feel like you're all around a lot of Philly guys too.
I was telling somebody I'm like in Philly way too much.
And then dreams is kind of like, what are you trying to build? Where are you trying to go? But you start talking to them about the future at that point. And so I've always kept that acronym in the back of my head when I'm out there talking to people. I'm in a dinner table, and it starts to get a lull. It's like a quick thing in my head that you're going to lean to do, which I think people that are out in the community, they are used to this. This is all like, yeah, of course it is. But for somebody out of college or somebody that came from a family that didn't teach you those skill sets to be able to do it, you don't realize that. So those small little things help you, especially when you're nervous and you might have social anxiety, to be able to quickly ground you in to do it. Personally, I found is I don't like to talk about myself that much when I'm out in a social setting. I get uncomfortable because I think people are going to be bored. And what do they want? They don't want to hear about me. I think it was a book in my head that like, people don't care about you, ask them about themselves. Yeah. So I constantly think people can care less what I say at all time. So I'm always constantly trying to engage people about their lives. And what I also found personally that happened over time is I genuinely care and I'm interested
That's
in
your
learning
special
people's
sauce.
stories. Like, because in my mind, I can't learn telling you about that. And I really don't think you care. But if I can learn and understand, we were talking about family before and your parents, and I can understand your mindset before, your mindset after, and how you are learning through that process, that can only help me be able to do that. But if I'm sitting there asking those questions, you'll also be like, well, this guy actually cares about me. And it's both, right? It is a part where I do care and I want to understand and I want to learn on it. And so that's just an easy acronym for me to be able to get through.
Well, when you think about that acronym, I think it's even, I wrote down COVID. I mean, we have a whole generation of kids that were stuck in their house for 2 years. You said social anxiety. There's a whole group of people that don't know how to talk to people. And the Ford analogy about understanding their family situation, or tell me your career history. What kind of volunteer stuff have you done? What are you doing for charity? What do you do for fun? Right? I mean, just what do you do for fun? And so I think that that's it's a simple analogy that can hopefully break some shells, because this business that we're in, if you can make it 5 years, you're a millionaire. You're done.
I was talking about this the other day.
And it's just like, we got to help people get through that, and active listening and learning and not putting up your defenses, and learning how to communicate, getting that first sales job and just getting your head bashed in and not quitting.
Yeah.
Right.
No, quick question for you. Is that purple you have on your paper? Is that a story about me? What is that? What is that purple thing? I'm a little worried. Like I see the purple thing on there.
No, it's funny.
I hope it's a story about Eric.
Yeah,
my,
those are the best ones.
You talked about, you were indoctrinated by your dad about reading, and my favorite book of all time is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand, yeah.
And it's kind of the only book that I've ever kind of reread, but this is not. I've developed a practice in the morning. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, when it's still kind of quiet in the neighborhood and the fountain's going, I read for an hour, and I tend to read diverse stuff. And I don't read like sit down and read for an hour. I'll have 3 or 4 topics I cycle through, and I may only read 2 pages of a book and 4 pages of another one.
Yeah.
But I wrote this down. It says control is the function of the ego. And so many people have got to figure out, what am I doing for lunch? What am I doing for dinner? What am I doing tonight? What am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing in 2 weeks? What am I going to do for my future? What? And the author of this book was talking about surrendering and not always having to be in control, not always having to have the answers. And that when you give up need to control everything, things kind of chill. My daughter Megan got me a journal to journal in, and I'm not.
Yeah, I can see your handwriting. Tough.
I'm not a journal.
Make sure nobody else can read it.
Yeah, I'm not a journal guy, but I did it for 6 months, and then my youngest son gave me another journal, and it's been great to kind of ground me in all these big rock problems are really not that big, and I need to. For us to be really good in this business, we have to have egos, right? We all have egos, right? It's more of what are we letting our egos do? And the author was basically saying, look, if you just don't have to control everything, life can be a lot better. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I have a lot of thoughts, to be honest, on it. Just with the word ego, a line I heard from somebody was, everybody has an ego, but you don't want the ego in front of you leading you. You want your ego behind you supporting you. And so when you're speaking and you're kind of thinking through, like it goes back. So I was sick. So I had stage 4 cancer a few years ago. All good, all clear now at this point, but went through radiation, chemo. One of the biggest learnings I had from that was the difference between an inconvenience and a problem. And so most of life is filled with a lot of things that are inconvenient, right? Okay, your business, you had a rough year last year, like you were saying, relative to the year you killed beforehand. Okay, that's inconvenient. You got to fix it. Maybe you had, you had cash crunch in the business. Maybe you had, you had to let go of people you don't want to let go, or maybe, you just didn't get to be able to fly private anymore or something like that. Whatever your issues were, that's inconvenient,
Yep.
right? The real problems was like being sick, or an elderly parent being sick, or, one of your kids being, hurt. Those are the real problems they have. Now, oftentimes when you're running in life too fast, you don't get to see the difference between an inconvenience and a problem. And so what I found, slow mornings lead to stress-free days. And so when you go to that concept of where you're journaling in the morning, it just goes to this piece where I used to get out of bed, rush, get dressed, shower. I'm already looking at my email. I'm running into the day and I'm off. And I was in a heightened set of stress the whole time. And so everything was problems I was dealing with because I never got grounded to understand the difference between an inconvenience and a problem. However you decide to slow your morning down, whether it's journaling, whether it's through prayer, whether it's through meditation. For myself personally, I wake up, I have a book of it's 6 different books on my desk, and they're from the Daily Stoic to the Daily Dad to Peter Drucker's Daily Management Tips to there's another one where it's all Robert Greene's books all into one for daily quotes. I have a bunch of them. And then I have a journal that goes and asks me a different question every day. So I pick like 1 or 2 of those books and I read a page of that, which is set up for a daily thing that morning. And then I journal a little bit. Then I go and I read I don't know what it's almost like a confirmation piece of who I expect and want to be. After I got sick, I said, the man I am, I'm proud of, I'm successful, but it isn't what I think I could be. I really believe I could be a much better person, and not just a better dad, not just a better individual, but just a better contributing member of society. And I did not hit my own potential. And partially because I just started my morning so fast and ran into whatever was in my calendar and my executive assistant threw in. And so for myself, I said, okay, I want to read every day of the person I think I'm going to be. So instead of chasing people's idea of who I thought I should be, I started grounding myself of, no, this is who I am, and let me set my day forth with that. And then I go and I do like a bunch of like little stretches and exercises to get my body moving and that, because I'm old and I get creaky, and I do that part. And then after that, I'm about to have my cup of coffee. I go have my cup of coffee. I do a 5-minute journal, 3 things I'm grateful for. I look at my calendar for the day, 3 things that I know I'm going to accomplish that day. And then I do 1 mantra. I kind of stick on a mantra.
That is the book my daughter gave me. What are you doing?
It's an app. 5-minute journal does it for me. But yeah.
That was what I did for 6 months.
And I've done it now for that one. I've actually done for like 7 or 8 years, that off and on. And I I probably do it 5 days a week, but like, that's my morning thing. And then I go wake up my kids, but I have all that time to set me of my mind's thinking the right stuff. I know who I am. I'm grateful for what I have. I've laid out what's important to me for the day. And now I'm ready to go slay the day. And then that's what I start out with. And the mornings I miss that, those mornings feel more stressful. Those mornings I feel a little out of control on it to be able to do it. So, that's kind of, you brought up the morning routines. That's what it reminded me of. And I think I've journaled since high school. Most of the time I journaled high school, college, and a little bit after college was all about women, or like I was upset about something and it was only negative stuff. And as I've gotten older, it's turned into a little bit more of me reflecting back on good and bad, grateful and not, and talking through what I thought were problems that were inconveniences to be able to help me find it. And what I found is whenever I write something down, it ends up becoming much more clear of what it is. And usually it's not a big deal and the answer's there. And so that's what it reminded me of that. I don't know if we didn't even talk about this at the time or anything, but like, that was awesome. You hit something that I've been very intentional on.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, I think one of the things you said, you sent me an Instagram post last year and it was let the small fires burn. Like, that was my big thing last year. Like, every little thing I was trying to control, I was trying to fix things that didn't matter. They didn't create revenue. They were probably just for ego. Like, I wanted my QuickBooks to be perfect. The note doesn't matter if your QuickBooks are perfect, right? Like, I wanted the filing system to be perfectly organized so I could find anything. I don't go look for anything anyways. My EA finds it, right? Like, why does it matter? And like, those are the things. He sent me an Instagram post like last year, and it was, we'll just let the small fires burn. And there's always going to be small fires. You always joke. He's always says this, and it's not true because his company's really well done. He goes, 99% of my company is duct taped at all times.
Well, what I mean by that is is I think there's never a time where I don't see tons of problems inside my
That's what
company.
I'm saying. Yeah.
On the outside, like you go to a nice restaurant, from the outside, it looks great. The plate's great on that. But you don't understand all the prep work that happened before they opened, or the craziness in the kitchen, if it's not an open kitchen, or even just behind it, the looks that they have to each other going through it. We can all, especially for those that are trying to build something meaningful, all see the problems that we have to fix. And as an entrepreneur or a good leader or a good manager, that's what we're programmed to do, is to go fix stuff. That's what it is. So it's like I have to be thoughtful to catch people doing right. I have to be thoughtful to realize what I have good, because that's not where my mind goes.
Right.
Well, and you said something to me when we were at Ameriprise that has always, stuck with me, and it's you can't always run at 10, right? If you are constantly running from 0 to 10 at a 10, when you need to run 10, you're not going to be able to run 10. So you need to dial it back to 6 or 7 with the ability to be able to juice it to 10 to deal with the big rock stuff. And I thought that, I mean, that clearly is something that you have probably learned over the years of journaling, because my journaling has gone from just gratefulness, right? I'm gratefulness for so much, regardless of all the stuff that's happening in the background, that the more we're grateful and the more we kind of don't have to control everything, it ends up being the more successful we get, which is counterintuitive, but it's
It's the truth.
yeah.
I sent you a text earlier, maybe last week, and I said, this year feels super easy.
Yeah.
And it was like totally the shift in mindset. It was this, letting the small fires burns. Not everything is life. I think like first year, I was like also living and dying by everything. Like every little decision, every little win was a big win. Like this year, like things feel easier when you let go. You let go of control. You're just like, you take take a little bit more ownership, take a little step back, but also have to trust the staff. Like, I don't know, man, like the vibes you put in the world, or the way you come into a day, like totally changes the entire day.
Well, I think you go what JP was just saying, right? Like, if you're trying to be a 10 at everything, you're gonna die. Like, you're gonna burn yourself out at it. Like, you got to be okay getting a C at some stuff, right? Like, and just that's it. You're gonna get a C and you're gonna be average at. But be real thoughtful where you're gonna get the 10, and then go get the 10.
Yeah.
But like, you don't have to get a 10 in everything, or you're gonna spread yourself way too thin. That's probably where you were at last year. You were just trying to kill everything instead of being like, your superpower is the fact that you can put complex deals together. Like, if you're an advisor and you're like, is my business complex, or I have a couple moving parts to do it, or I'm thinking about selling a part, but not, and you don't know the landscape of the business, and you could put that together. You could put multiple partners together. That's your superpower. Your superpower isn't figuring out payroll. Your superpower isn't figuring out the right technology to be able to have for your recruiters you have working in your office. That is not your superpower. You are the best that I've seen in getting complicated deals, or getting the advisors the best deal possible for their business and placing them in that. That is something that not everybody has. And I think you've kind of started to figure that out.
I got to negotiate against you two assholes for 2 years. So like I had to learn how to negotiate well.
No.
Him, that's the yeah.
No.
I called Pierce and he calls Zelensky and goes, nah.
It's you
But at least he tried to call Zelensky first. Yeah.
You learn from it. Well, I do want to pivot a minute to Coastal, because I take, although I shouldn't take any satisfaction of having you leave Ameriprise and go to Mass, I've just enjoyed watching you build this great company. And I because I'm more, 14 at Merrill and then Ameriprise, Stiefel, my first foray into 1099 and RA was at Cetera. Your firm is not well known, which surprises me because you're so darn successful. So I guess what I like is give me an overview of what Coastal is, and then when you're recruiting, what kind of candidate are you looking for?
Yeah, no, great part. So when I left Ameriprise, Met was already being bought out.
Did you see his face when I said I take a little pride in you leaving? He's like, "Where's this going?"
I was like, we're not gonna go bash it. So like picture this. So
Classics.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You know I don't bash anybody.
Right. It's a little backhanded.
Yes.
So I left. Met was already getting bought by Mass. So like I already knew that there was that independent version on the Mass side happening to be able to do it. It just was in the transition part. So Met was only like a 3 or 4 month piece to do it. It was just my entryway to be able to have Mass as my private equity. This is how I describe it. So Mass Mutual has about 55 firms that they have affiliated with them for distribution, and they let those firms borrow money to scale and be able to do it. So MassMutual is a partner to me. They let me borrow money to buy lots of different companies, be able to borrow money to move advisors. You're a guy at Merrill and I want to move you. They let me borrow the money to be able to make those deals to do it. It's an independent firm. For being my private equity and being able to borrow money to scale to like 300 advisors, I use their technology, their tech stack, and I distribute their products from their insurance, their annuities. And right now we're the #1 distributor of their products in their whole system. The last 10 years have been really focused in, let's call it the last 8 or 9 years, have been really focused in scaling the insurance space. We've gotten really big on international life insurance, really big on cases for celebrities, billionaires. Like if you have a complex life case, we are probably the best infrastructure and firm to do that. And those are good, high margin business. And they're business that you can be able to work through the $30 million plus clients very easily without a lot of competition. So like if you go down Brickell Ave in Miami, you might have 80, 90 good asset managers between Merrill, UBS, Morgan, Independent, whatever it is. You have like 3 good life producers. So the competition's a lot thin on that part. So I made a decision that I'm going to go, even though we were managing 15 billion in assets, I'm going to go focus heavy on recruiting and building out that life side first. Once we built that side, Mass did a really good job building out their broker dealer significantly. They're a top 10 broker dealer right now. They're a top 5 independent broker dealer with assets under management. They hired an ops guy to build out the broker dealer, a guy named Von Bowman, from Merrill Lynch to build out their whole back office. So you want to start going private credit funds. You want to go through all the PE side. You want to go lending through Goldman. Everything that you would expect from a independent or wirehouse, you have on their broker dealer now. That's the broker dealer that I use. So now it's at a point where I've got, okay, let's start recruiting into the asset management space. So I just actually brought over on Friday a guy named Mike Swinehart. He was the #1 complex director at Ameriprise.
Wow, congratulations.
They're a top 10, top #1 branch in Vegas, right? Somehow he made Vegas the #1 branch. I brought him over to lead our head of wealth management. He started Friday. He's also a guy, go back to legacy. I hired him 22 years ago in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I brought him to Florida with me with Ameriprise. I put him into Vegas when the company said, no, Vegas, let's close. I'm like, no, this guy will grow Vegas. And he made it from a $1.3 million shop to a $35 million shop in Las Vegas. So the guy's a killer in that part, super good dude, but he's there to help me build out the wealth management side. So we're actually, I didn't even think about this as a marketing piece, but like it is the perfect time because now we're really starting to recruit people that are focused in on the financial planning AUM side when it was really heavy the insurance side beforehand, which is probably why in your orb, it's not very well known, Coastal Wealth, because we haven't really touched the asset manager. We manage 22 billion in assets. So it's not like we don't have a lot of assets and we don't have a lot of people doing it, but we've put ourselves more on the map on the life insurance side than opposed to the asset management side of the
Okay.
house.
Wow.
Yep.
Thank you. That's congratulations.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking too, because it gives us a little bit of context of what it is. And if Eric could just give me some recruits, I'd be happy.
Oh, geez. Here we go. Here
Just
we
kidding,
go. I get that call once a week.
Where's your pipe?
Yeah, let's see what one look like.
Send me your Salesforce notes.
Eric has been, and then him and I started our relationship a few years ago because he was our #1 recruiting firm for us. But in particular was really driving people that had a balanced practice between life and asset management. And now the pipeline's pretty robust coming from him. So there's still one firm that gives us a little bit more that I make sure that he knows he's not #1 with us at this point.
Yeah, they give a lot more quantity. Remember that?
That's true. You do.
I think.
Call it.
I mean, I think it's been fun. Yeah, like I enjoy working with Jeremy's firm a lot. They have a really. I think one of the cool things about them is looking at all the Mass firms, space I know pretty well. By far the most talented executive team. Like Jeremy is like absolutely in this. I'm not going to take shots at all Mass firms, but unlike most Mass firms, Jeremy is absolutely willing to pay like a solid executive team to get things done.
Honestly, I hired people that could be in my role, right? Like people that can run their own businesses. It is a lot of people with seasoned executive experience in all those different spots. Like when I needed a head of wealth management, I went and took somebody that has proven success in that area to be able to do it. So it was constantly taking the best from all the companies to build it. What I'm also super proud about is honestly, it's extremely diverse. Like I was in a room the other day with my mid-level managers. Out of 16 people, 14 people were not born in the US. You know
Wow.
how wild that is?
That's
We speak
crazy.
43 languages inside the company. And my exec team, there's 3 African Americans that sit on my 9-person exec team. So it's a very diverse, not to mention like 50% of the company speaks Spanish because we're in South Florida, half the company's here. Yeah, super diverse too. So we got diversity from skill sets, diversities from companies, and just diverse from, people where they grew up and where they're from. It really allow us, I think, to be able to be a new type of organization in the space that really, no matter where you're coming from, company wise or background wise, you're going to feel at home here to do it.
Well, where is the business going from your perspective?
I think it's a good question. So we know that we are going to lose about 40% of the advisor force in the next 10 years. And we know that in general, most companies are not recruiting inexperienced people in. And so if an average advisor deals with 150 to 200 families, they're going to have to deal with 1,000 to 2,000 families. Take out AI or anything technology wise anyway, just because the amount of people leaving. So an advisor is going to have to build efficiencies and systems and structures to be able to support managing a lot more households. It is a fortunate time that AI is coming out where it is, where you're going to be able to be an empowered advisor with technology a lot more beforehand to be able to support multiple advisors or multiple clients. And I think what clients are going to want is at 2 a.m., they're going to want some advice and they're going to want response. Okay, you have an agent responding to it, giving advice just like you would if you were putting it in any of the LLM models, Claude, Chat, whatever it is. But then an advisor sees what you did, saw what the advice was giving you, and follows up the next day going, hey, I saw this part. Yep, I'd agree with the agent saying this, but I might have a twist to that. That would be the difference.
Nuance.
Or it's like a joint chat where you're going back for going, hey, I would do this prompt a little bit different on here because the output you're getting is not in line with an most up-to-date estate tax law, or it doesn't know your situation here that you did not put in. I think the efficiency to manage more families is going to be important. I also think advisors are going to have to run more like a firm within a firm. And you've already seen this idea of teaming, but I think the word teaming is overused. The move from a salesperson to a CEO is a very hard move.
Yes.
In the GDC spot, you're about 500,000 GDC. You start to move from, I'm just an advisor selling stuff. I mean that in a very professional way, to I'm starting to have to run a business. I am thinking about a junior advisor. I have an assistant, but now all of a sudden my assistant's taking time off, or they say they need assistant, or I got to replace them. And you're starting to deal with business owner stuff, like the E-Myth book, right? Like you're going right through and you're all of a sudden moving away from technical into running a business. That is only going to scale significantly as you deal with more families and the revenue and the GDC and the FYC goes up. So I think, for advisors, learning to run a business is going to have to be a skill set that they're going to have to get better at. And that's kind of, for ours, our payouts are 80 to 88.5% at the top end of the GDC grid, yet we cover their expenses. And we have a McKinsey model inside our firm that teaches people how to scale their business up to be able to exit. I'll give you an example. We put together three partners. We helped them build a whole employee advisor set underneath them, added in staff. So they had about 24 of their total team after a while, doing about 5 million in EBITDA. We ended up talking to them, and two of them wanted to sell. We helped them shop. I was going to buy it. I couldn't get the structure right. It's hard for me to compete with PE. We helped them with a PE deal. They ended up selling their business for 32 million. We helped facilitate the transition of their business out to sell to PE for $32 million. That was exactly what our models built. We brought in individual advisors, taught them how to be good advisors, helped them create a firm within a firm, helped them scale that firm in a firm, and then help them exit outside of Coastal Wealth to a PE. And there's not many firms like even RIAs don't want to help you go out to do it. You're not going to have a Cetera or an independent structure go try to help you sell to PE. And you're definitely not going to have a Merrill, a Morgan, or a Northwestern help you sell to a PE at all.
Well, and you a couple things that strike me. It sounds like Coastal is really a family office that is PE backed, that is now kind of expanding, your offerings, which is, again, going back to your uniqueness. That's interesting, and you probably should be recruiting more to him.
Thank you, JP.
The other thing that really struck me that I don't think people get the joke, Eric and I were actually talking about this morning, succession planning. I have seen large. So first, if you're at a W-2 shop, and you're at, Merrill, UBS, your succession plan is squadooch. It's ordinary income. It dramatically undervalues your business. If you then go independent, which, my first taste of independence was when Ron and Jim had Stifel Independent, which they just flipped to Equitable. I saw the power of being independent if you're a good business leader, because a lot of times, you're paying a net 80 to 88. If you run a really bad business, all of a sudden you could be in the 30s.
Well, there's also the new stat that just came out from one of the consulting companies that people in a captive W-2 model grow 30% more than people in an independent model. So so you guys kind of have the best of both worlds there. Like, you get it's not captive, but it's supported.
Yeah, I always
with
say
infrastructure.
we're supported independent model. That's how I position.
Because we've all seen it on the independent side. You guys at Ameriprise, me at Cetera, me at other places. Like, people who are indie, just don't grow.
Well,
or they grow exponentially, but most people just don't grow.
We recruited a $6 million team from Merrill to a large OSJ out of Boca, and the guy made more money in his first quarter than he did in his last 2 years going independent.
Just because the payout bump.
Yeah, payout bump, and being smart about how he thinks about his business and growth, right? And so that
OSJ has got some major support, though.
100%.
That's
but again, it's supported independence.
Yep, correct.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
It is supported independence, and that's where you need to move to. And I would only take big trades to this group. It's a guy that actually started a finance before this.
So we can say his name. We talked about him last time.
Saying he's a dear friend of ours. It's just incredibly successful. But the large indie firms are, only valuing EBITDA or EBOC at a much lower value, and they want to then lock you in, right? And I find that we all think that the EBITDA multiples or the EBOC multiples are going to shrink, but they're not. They're staying pretty steady, right? And so the fact that you're willing to use your McKinsey model, grow internally, then facilitate a liquidity event, again, it just shows you the scope of your family office kind of model. So
the idea is, solve the problems that are in the industry to do.
For people that don't know, why don't you tell people what EBITDA means, and then from a multiple perspective, what they can get versus being in a captive W-2 environment. We didn't talk about this, but
Yeah. So EBITDA is basically your net profit, to make it as simple as you can. Earnings before interest, taxes, and
depreciation,
amortization.
Yeah, good job. See,
we finished it up together. Got a boy.
Yeah, good work. Good work. So most firms, if you're on a PE side, are going to pay on a multiple basis, right? And what you're here is from 10 to 18x or something like that, crazy on it. What you'll get if you're selling to your junior, you're going to get like 3 or 4x, maybe a 5x. So if you're thinking about succession, it really comes down to, is my job to cash out as big as I can cash out? And I don't care what happens to my firm afterwards, who they cut, who they keep, what they do with it. Then private equity is probably the way. If your job is you want to preserve your legacy as much as you can, take care of the people underneath you, you might take less money and you're going to give it to your people underneath you, or your partners that are there, maybe your junior partners, for less of multiple. And then there's this in-between space you could play with, is the strategics. They're not going to give you the most cash. They're not going to give you the least. There's someone like, it could be like myself, where it's, I already have a business. I'm not going to write, I don't know the same PE economics because I'm not like trading at the turns. So I'm going to keep it for myself personally and run it through Coastal for the next 10, 20 years and use an employee advisor base, or I might partner up with one of my advisors to be able to do it. And there you might get your, 6 to 8 type multiple. So when you're selling, you got to start thinking ahead of time of where you want to be. Before you sell, you should be probably 2 to 3 years getting a good sense of what the succession is, but really 5 years, you're starting to tee things up. If you want to sell for the biggest amount of PE, you want an employee advisor based model with golden handcuffs in place to be able to sell with them, that you don't have any of the advisor relationships. That's going to get you your biggest multiple to be able to do it. That model takes 5 to 7 years to be able to build well with the right people to be able to get what you need when the brand's away from your name and the brand is moved over to a company name that somebody's going to buy. Most people think about selling 2 to 3 years. And I don't know if you guys have found this, but you guys talk to people selling all the time. I talk to people that want to sell, and as soon as they figure out the multiples, then they don't want to sell anymore unless it was a PE multiple. Well, because they're like, I can work another 3-4 more years. I'm fine. I'm going to keep going.
It's a generational thing though, too.
Yeah. It goes back to what we said earlier about EBITDA or EBOC, earnings before owner's comp. I see these. So
I know EBOC's like just our industry name.
Well, that's because the advisors rip out all the cash. There's no true EBITDA, right? Like you rip out all the cash.
Look, you're 1099 using your LLC efficiently and legally, right? Yeah. But my point is, I see so many 1099s don't focus on EBITDA, and then when they find out what their business is worth, they're like, "What?" But it goes back to what you just said. You need to start planting the seeds 5 years ahead of time. We had talked to an entity, and a large independent firm offered them EBITDA of 5, and then somebody else is offering them an EBITDA of 15. Right? They don't want either of those. They want to find the middle ground, right? Where you can definitely see 8, 8.5s, and you want to keep your baby. So anyway,
I mean, I think it also goes back to when you're selling, and this goes back to the plan, it can't be a 90% margin. Like high margin is also going to drag you down to a crazy place. So having a 95% margin or 85% margin, like the sweet spot is really like that 40 to 60% margin.
Having no margin
is
worse.
Also bad. Also bad. But like I see these people, then it becomes too dependent, right? Like it's the ability, like to Jeremy's point, the employee advisor base is important because of the platform. PE wants platforms. They don't want businesses. They want platforms. That's how you're going to get your highest multiple.
Tell more what you mean by platform.
Yeah, a platform where it's a plug and play to keep continuing to build versus buying a business where it just kind of is what it is, right?
They don't want to buy a book of business.
100%.
They want to buy a business that's sustainable when you take the owner out.
Scalable.
It keeps running to be able to do it. Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. Like that's where like the guys, a bunch of guys are like, oh, my business could be worth a bunch. I'm running at a 90% margin, paper thin. That will be less valuable than something at 50%. That will get a lower.
Yeah, like when you think, if you're pulling out owner's comp, let's call it $5-10 million bucks. But like that's what you're pulling out as owners, but you don't have a CEO running it and you don't have an executive team running it.
Exactly.
That's not really your profit.
No.
Because you have to build the whole executive team in place beforehand. Now, which is kind of counterintuitive. So if I'm netting 8-9 million, but I got to run a $4 or $5 million payroll to get everything right for me to do it with all the golden handcuffs to be able to have in place, which might be equity ownership, might be phantom stock, might be some piece of that. Now you're netting a 4 or 5. The multiple extra you would get on a 4 to 5 versus making your 8 or 9 will make up the difference in a few years if you set it up. But the PE doesn't want to go and do it. And if they have to go in and do it, they are going to pay you a lot less to be able to do it that way.
And you don't have relationships, right? You bring in a whole new executive team who has no idea who the clients are, has no idea.
It's going to be heavy back end because you're going to worry about losing clients.
100%.
Are you guys seeing PE chase advisors practices at the same level that we saw 2-3 years ago, or even maybe 4 years ago when interest rates were a lot lower?
You just had lunch with a bunch of guys from PE.
I did. I think there's kind of two trends that are going on. The one is everyone wants to get into the permanent partial equity acquisition, the less than 30%.
Give me an example of some companies that do that.
Merchant.
Yep.
So Merchant does a wonderful job of coming in and buying 19.9% of something. You'll get a multiple of 8, 8.5, you know, and they want you to grow, to your point, grow. And then if down the road they have a liquidity event at 12 or 14, you've got the ability to sell more of your business, or your 19.9%, you know, just doubled in value, right? And so that's a trend that I think everyone wants in on. What I'm finding is that low margin PE-backed independent firms don't have the gunpowder to act like a Merchant or a CI or a New Edge, right? You've done some big trades with New Edge, and so I think that's a trend that I expected the multiples to come down given the interest rate environment, but they haven't. I think they're just getting pickier. They're getting pickier, and basically that's where we're like, your EBITDA is not where it should be, you know, ergo you're not going to get this magic $60 million valuation you think you should get, right? And so I think the permanent partial trend is going to continue because there's a lot of money chasing it, and I think there's going to be a lot of tiers, phantom equity. These promise. I mean, there was a search firm that was recruiting to a firm that they're going to go public and you're going to get a multiple of X. And I'm like, bro, you're going to be in jail because it's either inside information or when they go half X, somebody's going to sue you.
Yep.
And so I think Jeremy, permanent partial is going to continue. I think that if you're running a business that's growing, your multiples are going to be stable.
That's the key. You're seeing that, like, but people are worried about margin. People are worried about EBITDA. But like the last big trade I did was, hey, are they going at 10% annually for the last 3 years or not? Because if they're not, we're out. Like that was and theirs is a $50 million team. And they said, we don't really care unless they're growing at 10%. Luckily they are.
How much of it is, when they look at that 10% growth, if it's referrals all from the principal, do they minimize that, or they need it like a marketing machine that's driving the client?
They want to see net new. Net 10% net new. That's all they care about.
Okay.
New assets.
They don't really care where it comes from. That they just want to know it's a growth.
What needs to be net new, not market growth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're that guy that has your phone ringing on.
It's my laptop. I didn't know. It went through the laptop. It's not my fault. It's probably somebody who needs to be recruited. Nope. It's actually your boy.
Yeah.
His staff. It's his executive team.
Yeah, they're recruiting. They're doing what they're supposed to do.
Jobs.
Send me your Salesforce notes.
I haven't done admin work in 10 years. It's a good part about being the talent, not the it's like when you're an actor, you're the talent, not the labor. With my dad, I'll say I'm a way better supervisor than I am labor.
It makes sense because you're always asking for a makeup guy.
Well, you just spend so much time on skincare at home, you know. I don't want to look like you two when I'm 50.
All right, I look pretty good for 62. Come on, bro.
Yeah, that's exactly
62.
Dude, what's it? 18 triathlons?
13 finishes.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's
13
awesome.
Ironman finishes.
5 you didn't finish?
No, I had one. My seat broke, and then
Wait, did you enjoy that?
no, I stopped. I stopped. I'm like, I'm not willing to do that. And then I was coming down. I did Ironman Nice, and I got up the hill. I was coming down the hill, and they pulled me off because I was dehydrated. And I'm like, no, I'll walk. I got plenty of time. They're like, nope. So anyway, let's close up with what we learned. Here's what I learned. It's important to be comfortable taking risks. It is important to affiliate with people that care about people. And today I learned a lot about Coastal that I didn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And I may be framing your company completely wrong, but in my head, you're basically a private equity backed family office that is turbocharged for growth. That's a pretty cool story.
I've never heard it phrased that way, but I actually think it's great.
Very accurate on it too. Like I always say, private equity, the insurance company. I mean, honestly, they own Barings, which is the number 5 PE out there, and there's KKR, all that stuff. It's right in the top 10. I mean, Mass is the Fortune 50 firm. They're huge. But yeah, they support us on all the growth, and they have a big paycheck behind us, or a big amount of money sitting behind us to recruit talent over here, and they let me borrow to do that. And then we do run it like a family office. We run it very much so to be able to help you be a better business owner and be able to help you get other revenue streams. So one of the things that we do, like, you're an advisor that, yes, I mean, you want to go talk about selling the PE. So I have a good asset management business. Yes, I do financial planning. Oh, but I can open up a PNC agency and sell auto, home to all my clients, add a whole other recurring revenue model. It's going to drive up my multiple and road up my EBITDA. So like, you have these opportunities through us to add on other product lines that fit into the financial plan to be able to drive up the value of your business, which most other firms don't allow us to have. And we own all these companies to be able to support that.
100%.
So what would you learn?
Yeah.
Other than 3 generations.
Yeah, right. 3 generations. Well, I learned that.
It's like the new name of the podcast.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to show up more than one day a week for that to happen. Yeah. I think the 2 big things I learned are, I think the 2 big things I have takeaways from this episode are, 1, I enjoyed that you guys got to share with others what you guys have shared with me over the years. I think that was really, really cool. And I hope everybody enjoys that as much as I do on a daily basis. Probably a little bit more so since they don't have to listen to you on a daily basis. 2, I think the number 1 thing for me, so number 2, but also number 1 is, man, like how lucky we are to get to choose who we do business with every day. I think going back and looking at the risks we took, I mean, this was really, the real reward isn't the money. It's not our names as CEO on pieces of paper or owning businesses or getting to do anything. It's the ability that we get to choose that, like, on a Tuesday morning, this is what we got to choose to do. Yeah. I think that's probably the coolest part about taking the risk, is how we get to enjoy our time with who we want to. I think that's probably my 2 favorite things about this.
One of the learnings I got, like, and that's why I just started, I could have interviewed you both on the landscape of the industry. And I think advisors that are making transitions to move think they know the deals, but most of the deals they know is either from Advisor Hub, which is pushed on certain companies, or it's whoever moved down the street from their, or down the office and told them the deals, or maybe what a wholesaler.
Or they got a call from LPL like everybody else in America.
Yeah. So one of the things is, though, but they're missing, listen, I recruit every day, I support every day, and I learn stuff talking to you guys about what the different deals are. I mean, people haven't heard of CI, and they're the biggest roll up in the RIA space. I mean, Kurt has done an amazing job when he decided to come in from Canada and be able to build that, right? And he wants employee-based RIAs, not owner-based IRAs, to do it. So I think for people not to tune in or talk to either listen this way or to talk to a professional like you guys and making a decision of where they want their career to go, they leave money on the table. And I think even talking when you're not ready to move, so you know how you structure your business, is an important move. And I've never thought about it sitting from the advisor side to be able to do it. To be honest, I prefer not them to talk to you, so I don't have to pay you guys fees to be able to do stuff, because you're expensive.
We are expensive.
But from an advisor perspective, to not do that at any point, even they're not thinking about moving, hurts their growth. And the second part, and I hope people got from just listening and going through it, is it is fun to work with friends. And like, this was super enjoyable for me. And if this was work every day, well, it's turned
kind of is
every day recently at this point, but like, this is what it's all about, and being able to do business with people you like. And you can never have a good deal with a bad partner, and you can never do good business with people that you don't enjoy all the time. And so I appreciate you guys having me here. I love being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming. That is episode 2, Profitable Without Pretending.
All right.
We're out.